Hi, this is PR Frank, and today I'm going to take you through some concepts about web typography, how to put fonts on a page, where to get them, how they can look the best, and the best for the situation you need. Let's first start by looking at this web page. This is my web page. You'll notice that I've got some fonts here that are selectable, and other fonts like my logo that is not selectable. I selected the whole picture, but I can't select the text. So this graphic is an example of an image font, and what that means is I had created this in Photoshop. I can also create this kind of thing in Adobe Illustrator, lots of other graphic editor programs, export them as an image that's nice and small and optimized for the web so it loads quickly, and then display it on my page. Some advantages of this are I can make these arrows that I want to use for my logo. I can put it on there. Some people actually use them in the footer. If you go to the footer, there's contact information. You'll notice how you can select my contact information, which means it's also searchable because it's text. However, if I made my contact information into an image, it's not something that can be tracked by robots and captured and then used to sell my information to advertisers or marketers. So some people have gone to creating image fonts for their footers. So that's image fonts. Another kind of font is Websafe fonts. And if we go to W3 schools, for example, and we search Websafe fonts, it's going to give us a page that's going to show us commonly used font combinations. So Websafe fonts are when you establish the font family, you can use Times New Roman, Times and Serif. So that'll give you a serif font unless you have Times installed, and then hopefully the browser of the user that you're coding the website for will have Times New Roman. And so here are some font families with common fallbacks that are safe for the web. Most people will have these fonts. Here's some sans serif ones, monospace ones, okay, and there's also ones for cursive and fancy. So you want to, when you design a website, it's easy to use Websafe fonts because you can guarantee the look of your site. What that looks like in Dreamweaver is if I'm trying to style, for example, the cycle tracks, which is in my H1, and I go to my text properties, you can see I can drop down this list of font families, and these are all nice web-safe font family combinations with their fallbacks. And I can select these different ones to try to decide, what I want the look for this site to be. So that's some web-safe fonts. The next kind of font is just a simple text font that you can install, or you can use the @fontface to install them. So if I go out to a site such as DaFont, it's got lots of fonts. It's important to look over on the right hand side to decide how they're supposed to be used. For example, this one called Very Popular is free for personal use. Okay, so I wouldn't use that if I was doing something to make money. That would be illegal. Here, this is donationware, so that means if I'm going to use that, then I'm expected to donate to the author, Haiti Shabrina, to be able to use this font. So make sure so that you can honor other people's creative property, and hopefully you'll be creating creative property. It's a great way to respect other artists and designers so that we can all make the money that we are hoping to make for the hard work we put in, and we're not doing anything illegal. In any case, let me go down ahead and download these for this example. So I'm going to click download button. I'm just going to download to my desktop. I can also download this Sweet November to my desktop. So if I want to use these fonts for my web page, what I need to do is I need to move these fonts into the folder where my website is being created. So for example, let me get another window going here. My website is here, and I have a CSS folder, an images folder. I just want to create another folder, and I'll keep the same convention of using the underscore and just call it fonts. And I want to move all these fonts that I'd like to use into my fonts folder. There's one of them, and I'll take the Sweet November ones, and I'll just be consistent and use TrueType again. Alright, so now I got a Sweet November and a Very Popular font there. The best thing for the web is to take spaces out, so I'm just going to take the space out there and use what's called camel case, where I've got no spaces but capital letters in between words. Alright, now that those are in my fonts folder, I can use what's called the @font face, and once again, if you search that on W3 Schools, I can just go @font face. It's going to give me the @font face rule, and here's the code for that. So what I want to do is I want to put this directly into my style sheet, and what it does is you use @font face. It's got the curly braces. You define the font family here. This is where you get to name it, and then you tell it where the source is, and it's a URL type situation. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to come back over into Dreamweaver. I'm going to go to my style sheet. Let's go to the very top. That way it loads before all the rest. Just put the @font face in there, and we want font family. That first one is going to be called Sweet November, so let's just call it Sweet November. Okay, and we got to tell it where it is. Sweet November is in my fonts folder, and it is called Sweet November. .ttf, TrueType font. Now it's important to remember that we are in our style sheet, which is in another folder, so we have to back out of that, // That way it'll back out of my CSS folder to be able to see the fonts folder and then load that font. So now if we use this font face, Sweet November, anywhere else in our document, it will load. So let's see how that works. Let's go over here and go to our styles. You'll see the @font face is now in there. And I'll go to my H1 where my cycle tracks is. I can go to font family and double click, and I can type Sweet November right there in the font family, and it starts to display that font there. Now it's good to have some fallbacks. Okay, so since it's a cursive font, I can have a fallback that just says cursive, and that way if my user doesn't have this font, it'll just default to a cursive font and have a similar look. Okay, so there you go. It doesn't look that great. We probably need to shift it over a little bit and that sort of thing. And then if we wanted to use our other font, we would just do the same thing. Let me copy paste those two. And now that I've put very popular in, I can use that as well. I can go to H1 and go to my text properties, and for my font family, I'll just double click in there, and we'll put in very popular. And as we can see, after we get very popular typed in correctly, it shows up using that display font. Now, of course, we're going to have to change some properties to make it look good. For example, font size. And Dreamweaver is easy to click and drag and see the changes live. Okay, that looks pretty good. We also want to, do some changes to the byline because that's not looking good anymore. We might want to change the line height a little bit so we have some separation. We might also want to go down or up to margin, give it a little margin on the right. Now once you notice that I'm changing the margin on the left rather, but it's not moving over, and that's because so far the margin is all the way over here. I have to change the margin enough to get past this logo, and then it'll start to kind of shift over. Here it goes. Okay, so maybe I'll put it right in there, and certainly going to have to make the font size larger to make it look good. Maybe increase the line height so it moves down. So you can really mess around with that until you get the look that you want. So that's how you do the @font face, where you can use some custom fonts, and the @font face loads them into the browser so the user can see them. But there are some fallbacks in case there's an issue with those loading. Another way to do fonts is by using Google Fonts, and Google Fonts is a really popular way to go. Fonts.google.com, and you can see there's lots of fonts from which to choose, and they're readily available all over the web. Okay, so let's just pick a couple of Google fonts that we think might look good. So I kind of like this Orbitron, and we can go with this Amatic as well. So once we like a font on Google Fonts, we click the plus sign, and it adds it to our little tray down here. Clicking the plus sign. Now we have 2 families selected, and once we click that, it gives us some choices here. And the easiest thing to do, we could download them and do the same thing we did with the at font face. But the easiest thing to do is go ahead and just select this link element here, which points directly to the names of those files on the Google server, and we just copy that. When we switch back over to Dreamweaver, that's going to go in our HTML. So right after this link to our style sheet, there's another link tag, and I'll paste it in there. When we go then into our style sheet, that's where we put these guys. So what we have to do is we have to put these in for our font families where we want them. You'll notice that Orbitron automatically falls back to sans serif, and Amatic SC falls back to a cursive font. So I just copy one at a time. I copy that. And in Dreamweaver, I'll go down to the H1. H1 is where I want to replace that one. And you'll notice right away it displays that font pretty close. And then we switch back over to Google, get the other font family, and replace the byline font family property with the Amatic. And there we go. So now we've got those, and of course there's some reworking to do. We can just come on over, we can resize that font back down to something reasonable. That looks pretty good. Reduce the line height again so it shrinks back up in there, and we just keep aligning it. It's good to have your text align and your fonts look good with each other. And that's how to use the Google fonts within Dreamweaver. And I hope this helps you kind of get a grasp on how you can use some custom fonts to get the look that you like on your website. Thanks for watching.